Okay, let's talk about something a little bit more concrete. Earlier this week, I read that the magic number for retirement in the United States is now $2,089,000. The number came from a 2025 BlackRock survey where Americans were asked a simple question. How much money do you think you need to retire comfortably? And the average answer? You guessed it, just over $2 million. Now here's the scary but fairly obvious part. According to that same article and survey, most Americans aren't even remotely close to this. The median retirement account balance is around $87,000. That's a pretty massive gap between perception and preparation. So I wanted to slow this down and digest this a bit. Not to scare you, not to say that you need $2 million to retire, but to explain what that number actually represents and how you can think about it. Because the real problem isn't whether you personally have $2 million. The real problem is that most people don't know actually what they're aiming for in retirement. And here's the reality from this rather scary number. The retirement magic number isn't universal. It's very personal and depends uniquely on your situation. My name is Brandon, and this is for informational and educational purposes only. This is not investment advice. I'm an ex-financial advisor who used to hold a Series 7 and 66 license, but now I like to share my knowledge online and freely. So today I'm breaking down what a retirement number actually means, why 2 million might be right for some and wrong for others, and what I believe are 6 practical tips to calculate your own number. So let's get into it. First, why a little bit over $2 million? Psst. Big media loves big roundish numbers. Sounds risque, right? But at one point it was $1 million, then it was $1.5 million, and now it's a little bit over $2 million. That sounds dramatic and daunting, and honestly, for a lot of people, it sounds impossible. But it's also telling us something really important. First, the number keeps going up generation by generation. Why? Inflation, rising costs of healthcare, longer lifespans, lifestyle expectations. Everything kind of just costs more over time. And then second, this is the part where people skip. Retirement isn't a standardized product. It's not a Costco bulk pack of 25 years that costs the same for everybody. Your retirement number depends on where you live, when you retire, whether or not you own or rent, how you want to live your life, what healthcare costs for you, and whether your plan is to work part-time or not at all. And then also, do you want to help your kids? Do you want to travel, sit on a porch, build something new? Before we panic about the $2 million number, we should probably understand where that number even comes from. Because it's not just set randomly, it usually ties back to something called the 4% rule. Very simply put, researchers took a look at history and said, if someone were to retire and withdraw 4% of their portfolio for the first year and then adjust that amount for inflation every year after, what are the chances that the money lasts about 30 years? If you guessed it, historically, with a balanced mix of stocks and bonds, it worked most of the time. Now, there are debates about the 4% rule now. Absolutely. Some people argue that it should be lower. Some people says it depends on the market conditions and it's not guaranteed, and nothing's guaranteed. But it's often used as a starting framework to generate a retirement number. So here's the math behind that. If you have $80,000 per year in retirement and you divide that by 0.04, that gives you $2 million. That's it. That's where that number comes from. And interestingly, a lot of Americans believe that they will need $80,000 a year to live comfortably in the United States. So when you average that high cost and low cost areas across the US, that number kind of tracks. But here's the part that most people miss. It's not about the $2 million. It's about the $80,000. If you only need $60,000 per year, now you're looking at a $1.5 million retirement. If you can live comfortably on $40,000 a year because you downsize or move overseas, now you're closer to $1 million. And the number itself isn't the main point. It's the annual spending that really decides your retirement. So now, instead of asking, do I need $2 million to retire? The better question is, what lifestyle am I trying to fund? And what does that actually cost per year? Once you answer that question, the math becomes the tool instead of the headline. And so that's exactly where these 6 tips come in, and I believe will be helpful. So tip number 1, decide what game you're playing. If you go to a tennis court with a golf club, you're gonna have a bad time and most likely lose the match before it even starts. You have to decide what game you're playing because most people jump straight into the math. But retirement isn't a math problem first, it's a design problem. And when people hear $2 million, they react emotionally and often freak out. But that number only makes sense if we know what kind of retirement we are planning. So asking questions like, are you going to be traveling internationally a few times a year? Are you going to be living near family or just keeping life simple? Are you going to move overseas to lower your cost of living? Are you going to have a second career because you enjoy working and want to keep busy? Are you going to buy an RV and explore the country? These are questions that have completely different answers because they're playing completely different games. So if your version of retirement is slow mornings, local golf, and a prepaid house, maybe that lifestyle costs $60,000 per year. If your version is two vacation homes and a home, frequent traveling, and helping kids with their down payments and finances, maybe that's closer to $150,000 a year or more. The number doesn't determine the life, the life determines the number. Now, here's where a good puck metaphor fits in well. If you don't know which goal you're trying to skate to or shoot at, you can't possibly score correctly. So most people are swinging at a moving target without defining where that goal or net is, and so they'll miss every single time. So simply put, tip 1 is define your retirement in real terms and the lifestyle you want. Then put a realistic number to that. Okay, let's talk about tip number 2. Aim to be where the puck is moving to, not where it is now. So now you know what game you're playing, and here's the next big mistake that people make. People calculate everything in today's dollars. They say, I spend $75,000 a year right now, and that's my number for retirement. But you're not retiring right now. You are retiring in the future. If you're 40 years old and you're retiring at 65, that is 25 years away. 25 years of inflation, 25 years of healthcare changes, 25 years of tax shifts. If inflation averages at 3% a year, something that costs $70,000 today can cost roughly more than $140,000 in 25 years. That's not dramatic. That is just the sad reality of math. And that's where most retirement plans quietly break, because people build plans based on today's prices for a future that will most likely cost much more. And that's skating to where the puck is right now. But in retirement planning, you have to skate to where the puck will be. Another pucking analogy, right? So there's another layer. Your expenses won't just inflate, they'll evolve. Think about it this way. Maybe your mortgage is gone, but your healthcare increases. You travel more in your early years of retirement, then you spend less mid-retirement because you kind of want to hang out. You spend more again later to support on healthcare and long-term care at the end. There's something called the retirement spending smile. Higher spending early on, lower spending in the middle due to taking it easy, and then higher spending again later on due to health reasons. So if you're not planning for a flat line either, you're planning for a moving target that you want to average over 20 to 30 years, depending on how old you are and your life expectancy. But if you use something like the 4% rule as a rough framework, the rule is assumed that long term's average. But the sequence of returns matters a lot, and if markets are rough early on in retirement, withdrawals hit harder later on. So your number needs to have a margin, future dollars, future risk, future realities, and it's not just a snapshot of today. So tip 1, choosing the game. Tip 2, aiming to be ahead of where the play is going to be. Because retirement isn't about reacting to where you are now, it's about preparing for where you're going in life. Tip 3, housing changes quite a lot. So the difference between owning and renting. Housing is one of those big variables in math retirements, not investing, not stock picking, housing. The other ones are important too, but where you live and how you can live can shift your required retirement number by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's break this down clearly. If you own your own home, your mortgage is paid off before retirement, hopefully, and your required annual income drops significantly. That's powerful. But let's not pretend a paid off house is a means of free living. You still have property taxes, insurance, possible HOA fees, and the big one is maintenance and repairs. People hate that and sometimes forget it. Roofs need replacing, HVAC systems fail, driveways crack. And so a paid off home lowers pressure, but it doesn't fully eliminate the costs. But what it does give you is stability, predictability, and protection from rent inflation. And for some people, that peace of mind is worth everything. Now, on the other hand, if you rent, you basically have that ability of to move anywhere, flexibility. You're not tied down to location. You can relocate easily if prices go up. You can downsize quickly if necessary. You can avoid surprises like capital expenses of like a $25,000 roof replacement. But that flexibility is incredibly valuable in retirement, especially if you want to move closer to family. You want to test out living overseas or a different state. You want to follow the better weather. But the problem is that rents may rise with inflation. So your retirement income needs to account for that increasing housing costs over time. You're trading stability for flexibility, and neither is automatically better, but it really depends on your goals, your mobility, and your risk tolerance. Next part of the housing is location as leverage. And so it's very powerful because location changes everything. Retiring in a high-cost US city is completely different in terms of retiring in a low-cost state. And then on top of that, retiring outside the US, Portugal, Malaysia, Thailand, parts of Spain, they can dramatically lower housing costs. And now you have to factor in visa rules, healthcare access, taxes, currency risk, and much more. But from a purely housing standpoint, location is a huge leverage position. That leverage can help shrink or expand your retirement number drastically. The point isn't that renting or owning is good or bad, or vice versa. The point is that housing decisions are not just a lifestyle decision, they are a retirement math decision. And small housing changes can move your required portfolio by 6 figures or more sometimes. And so this is why that tip matters. Retirement isn't just about what you earn and what you have at the very end, it's about what you need, and housing is one of those most critical elements of that. Tip number 4, healthcare, which is the silent giant. Healthcare is one of those wild cards in retirement planning. It's a line item that people don't forget, but sometimes underestimate the most. It can quietly blow up an otherwise solid plan. So if you retire before 65 in the United States, you're responsible for your own health insurance until Medicare kicks in. We all know that healthcare in the United States is kind of a hot mess, and it's really not cheap. Depending on your coverage and your location, that can easily run $10,000 to $20,000 per year, if not more. So if you're retiring at 55 instead of 65, there's a potential 10 years of private coverage that you have to fund. 10 years is a lot when it comes down to healthcare. That alone can shift your retirement numbers significantly. Now, after 65, Medicare helps, but Medicare doesn't always mean free. You still have premiums, supplementals, prescription plans, out-of-pocket expenses, and the possibility of long-term care. Now, here's the bigger issue. Healthcare inflation has historically risen faster than general inflation. So when we talked earlier about aiming to where the puck is going, that stupid healthcare puck is moving even faster. Costs in this category don't just rise, they outpace everything else. And then there's longevity. We are living longer, technically, which means that healthcare isn't just a short-term cost. It's a potentially 20 to 30-year line item. And when you calculate retirement number, you need to build in pre-Medicare coverage if you retire early, supplemental insurance after 65, and at least a thoughtful plan for long-term care at the end of life. You don't have to assume the worst case scenarios, but you need to assume that healthcare will be one of your largest retirement expenses. Retirement planning isn't just about funding the fun parts of retirement, but it's about funding reality, and healthcare is a huge part of that reality. Tip number 5, you need to subtract out other income before you panic. This is where the $2 million headline becomes slightly misleading, because your investment portfolio doesn't necessarily need to fund 100% of your retirement lifestyle. That is the assumption baked into a lot of these scary numbers. But in real life, it's more layered than that. Here's what people sometimes forget. You have other income sources, or hopefully you have other income sources. There's Social Security, sort of, hopefully for the younger generations too. A pension for a lucky few. Rental income, hopefully for some lucky ones as well. Dividends from stocks, hopefully after investing. And maybe a small business or a part-time consulting that gives you extra income. All of these reduce the pressure on your retirement portfolio. Let's walk through a simple example. Let's say your retirement lifestyle requires $100,000 per year. If Social Security covers $35,000 of that, now your portfolio only needs to generate $65,000. Using that 4% rule as a rough framework, $65,000 divided by 0.04 equals $1.625 million. That's very different from the 2.5 million. Or take a smaller example. If you need $80,000 a year and Social Security is paying you $30,000 a year, your portfolio only needs to cover $50,000. Now, $50,000 divided by 0.04 equals 1.25 million. So here, see how that number shifts. So this is why that number isn't universal, but it assumes that your investments are carrying, that number assumes that your investments are carrying the weight of the entire load. But retirement planning isn't just about the pile of money, it's about the income streams and what you can make of them. So the smarter question isn't how big does my portfolio need to be to retire? The smarter question is how much of my lifestyle needs to be funded by my investments and what other income streams do I have? This is a very different conversation. And once you subtract the predictable income streams, and the number often becomes more manageable. It's still really challenging though. It's a hard number to think, but it's manageable. And that shift from panic to planning is powerful. Tip 6, reassess life as needed. Life changes, so your number could change. I think one thing that's not said enough is that your retirement number is not permanent. It's not something, some sacred figure that you have to calculate at 35, print out, laminate, and then never touch again. That's not how life works, and especially how retirement works. Life moves, you change, things change, priorities shift, markets rise and fall, healthcare definitely changes, opportunities show up, and then curveballs show up. But then maybe at 45, you think you want to retire at 60, but then at 55, you realize you actually enjoy working and you want to work a little longer. Or maybe the opposite happens. You build enough flexibility and you want out earlier. Maybe you move to a lower cost area. Maybe you decide that you want to help a parent out, or you want, maybe you support your child longer than expected, and then maybe you build a side business and generate incomes well into your 70s. All of those things change the math a lot, and that is completely normal. Retirement planning isn't a one-time calculation. It's an ongoing conversation with your future self. And when markets run up and your portfolio grows faster than expected, you reassess. When markets pull back, like we're expecting now, and things look scary, you reassess. Your housing situation changes, you reassess. All these goals evolve, and you just need to take it not emotionally, not dramatically, but just thoughtfully. Retirement planning isn't about predicting the future perfectly, because that is impossible. It's about adjusting intelligently to reality as it unfolds. Earlier, we talked about skating to where the puck is going. Here's an extension of that idea. The puck doesn't just move once, it keeps moving. And good planning means that you keep moving with it. You don't freeze, you don't chase, you don't panic at headlines. You recalibrate when needed. And that's how confidence is built. Not by hitting some magic number and declaring victory, but by staying engaged with the plan year after year and adjusting as life unfolds. That's maturity in investing and finances. That's how you avoid lemurring, and that's how you position yourself to win at life. So why am I bringing this up? Because when people see that $2 million needed in retirement, they do one of two things. They panic, they shut down, and neither of those are helpful. The real power comes from knowing what you need in your lifestyle and how you need to get there. When you know your number, you know how much to save. You know how much to aggressively invest or not. You need to know what you're on track for. You need to know when you can ease up. This magic number isn't magical. It's math tied to your vision. So my final thought is, yes, Americans believe that they need $2 million to retire, but retirement planning isn't about chasing headlines. It's about designing your version of financial happiness, then building that financial engine that supports it. So here's my question. Have you ever calculated your retirement number? Or are you just reacting to big, scary benchmarks? Drop a comment. What age do you want to retire and where? And maybe I can help calculate that. Let's talk about it. If this was helpful, please subscribe, like, if you're so inclined. I know we should all be aiming for bettering ourselves and positioning ourselves to win. And lastly, as always, this is for educational and informational purposes. This should not be considered as financial advice. If you need help, you should reach out to a financial advisor. You could always chat with me about it, but I won't be able to help you in that sense. But we can always chat. Thanks for watching.